Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are working remote this week, but we got a really fun topic for you. So, coaches, we know when you recruit a player, you're hoping you're going to get a player who's really good at everything. But seeing how we know that's just not realistic, where can you make the biggest impact if you have to help a player improve drastically on offensive skills or defensive skills? Where do you have the best chance to make a difference as you get ready to jump into your season? So before we get into that topic, let's talk about patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. I want to say thank you very much to Oliver Chu. Oliver is our newest patron. We would love all of you to become patrons. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Click on the link. It'll take you through the steps. We certainly do appreciate the patrons that we've had. We've had a great group of people that have been supporting us for a long time, but we also would like to see some more people come on board. I think that the more people that can help us, the more likely it is that we're going to be able to keep doing the podcast long into the future.
I was going to say, Tori, too, with the patrons, that even just a little bit of help goes a long way for us. We've been committed to it for a long time, and we're going to stick with it, but we're able to get some help from the listeners that will make a huge difference for us. So we do appreciate so much all those that are already on board, but we need some new ones, Tori.
The one thing that does happen, because it certainly seems to be there's a shelf life.
The trend.
As patrons start with us, they usually have a younger player, younger daughter, or they're coaching a younger team. And so they're really trying hard to learn as much as they can and to have as much knowledge as they can. And then when their kids age out, they just don't feel the same need or the same level of commitment to supporting the podcast as they might have earlier. And so we definitely do have a shelf life, so we need to keep bringing in some new people to replace the people that do leave eventually when their kids get done playing, when they decide that their interest level has changed a little bit. So, Don, let's get into this. You're having a tryout. You're getting ready to start a season, and looking at your roster, and you have obviously a whole lot of kids that you really like, that you really are excited about coaching, but some of them might be great hitters that aren't great defensive players. Some of them might be great defensive players that aren't necessarily great hitters. And I guess the question for today is, looking at that conundrum, what's the best approach? Where can we make the biggest difference that probably will have the biggest impact on the success our team might have for the year?
I think there's a lot of things that go into it, Tori. I think it's a great question for sure. And as we're preparing for the season, we're looking at our current roster, the kids that we got coming back. We're looking at their strengths and weaknesses. Are we going to have to focus on fielding for a lot of our current players because that's their weakest skill set? So to add another one in there that would also be a great hitter but be a little challenged with their fielding skills, might be easy to facilitate bringing them along if we were already going to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff as a group. But me particularly, I feel a lot more competent, or that I can have a big impact with a kid that may not hit so well, but is an amazing fielder and got a great arm and has all those other pieces already intact. So I might be more willing or interested in bringing on a hitting project rather than a fielding project for me personally. Right. But I think a lot of it has to do with, what kind of league are we going to be in? Is it going to be a rec league with a lot of rec pitchers that the hitting piece might not be as big a deal? Or do we have a pitcher on our team that is a really good change of speed and spot pitcher that's going to be depending on a defense to make those tough games more attainable for us because we've got great fielders? So I think there's a lot of factors that might play into that, but I think it's a great question for all of us to be thinking about or looking at when we're going to these different tryouts and things that we're having for our groups or our organizations. And it's just a good topic for us to chat about today for sure.
I think you touched on a couple of really important things. Number one is, I think all coaches have certain things that they're just more confident in, feel more confident with, feel like they can do more, maybe make a bigger impact. So obviously that's going to always play a factor. The other thing, though, that I think we have to also talk about is some pieces of the picture, depending upon how often we're practicing, how many practices we get to have, how much time we get on the field. Are we able to, work with the kids often enough that we can really make a big impact? Or do we have one practice a week for 2 hours? And out of those 2 hours, we've got to be really focused on, one or two things that are going to make a big difference. And to me, I think that's a big piece of this puzzle. Obviously, helping players learn individual skills, that are going to make them, better players. That's something that we can hope and expect and try to encourage players to work on their own a little bit away from practice. But if we only get one practice a week and we've got to make sure our team can play, good team defense, spending all our time at practice hitting probably isn't very productive, even though we might want to work on hitting more. And we might feel that that's, an area that our players really need a lot more work. And so I think, a lot of it's going to be a case-by-case discussion based on, each team's strengths, each coach's strengths, but also just the reality of how much time can you really spend and how much work can you really get done. You can ask a player to work on, increasing their arm strength or fielding, extra ground balls and stuff like that. But actually coordinating a defense so that she knows that when she picks it up, she's supposed to throw it to first base, that she's not going to get in the garage or in the driveway at home. And so, I think that's a big part of this question too, is how do you prioritize based on the amount of time that you're going to have together with your team?
No, I like that idea for sure, Tori, and facilities and cages, what type of expectations for the group we have, and all that stuff plays in.
Right. Especially with younger players, our goal as coaches should be to help them become the best, version of themselves they can. So, that's going to almost always include even a kid who's a great hitter can work on stuff to become better. Even a kid who's a great defensive player or a great pitcher can be working on stuff on their own to make them better. But I think the missing ingredient, this is something we've talked about quite a bit this year, is we need to give them guidance on the specific things we want them to work on. We can't just think because a player is going to hit 50 balls into a net at home, that means they're actually working on the stuff that they really need to work on to make a bigger difference in their performance, or playing catch in the yard or throwing 50 balls into the net or whatever it might be. That all those things with some guidance can hopefully be way more productive and get a lot more done for the players that we're coaching.
We can always help them hit though, Tori, right?
Yeah, well, and obviously you and I both love hitting.
Yeah.
But, I think that, again, like I said earlier, the example I use all the time is if our team is really weak on team defensive skills and we can't field a bunt, or we're really bad at, rundowns or cutoffs or, whatever it might be, depending upon the level that you're at, that's stuff they can't work on their own. So sometimes I think we have to, just really look at the stuff that we need to accomplish as a team, make sure that we're accomplishing as much of that as we can. And then if that still leaves us some time to work on the stuff that what do you have to work on versus what do you want to work on? The have to, I think, sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of what I'm comfortable with, what I want to do, what I enjoy doing versus what we really need to focus on to give our team a better chance to be competitive.
I'm always thinking, let's hit a little more, Tori.
12 to 11 is not a bad thing. Being at the ballpark, watching your team give up, 11 runs every game because they can't catch a pop-up or they can't throw the ball across the infield, I think would get pretty old pretty fast too. So
that can frustrate.
The combination, I think, is what we're really talking about. And I think, obviously we want our coaches to be thinking about it, because only a handful of you get to coach the kinds of teams where you don't have to really think about a player's weaknesses and how to address them and how to correct them. The reality of coaching is that every player on your team's got some things that they're already good at, some things that they're not very good at, and you got to make sure that you figure out ways to try to solve as many of those problems as you can. To wrap up this Coach Prep, if you have questions, ideas, things that you want to suggest as topics for Coach Don and I, please make sure you reach out to us at everythingfastpitch@gmail.com or fastpitchprep@gmail.com. Make sure you go to the fastpitchprep.com website so you can order your Square Cuts training discs. They're $49.95 a dozen. You also have access to the YouTube channel and the blog post. There's tons and tons of information. As a matter of fact, I think we probably have talked about this topic in one form or another on the website. So go ahead and check out that information. And again, make sure you order Square Cuts training discs. Also, please become a patron. Go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Follow the steps. It'll get you hooked up. And we certainly do appreciate the support of the patrons that we have. We really do never want to take that for granted. We want you to always know how much we appreciate you, and hopefully we get some more people to come on board. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer, Stan Lewis, this is Coach Tori saying thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.